Big Blue Nation, you've been lied to. You've been cheated. You've been swindled. You've been bamboozled. People out here telling you that the good teams, they draft best player available. They don't draft for need. That's the wrong way to do it. That's going shopping hungry. Heck, I've even told you it. But the truth is, you always need to add players that's going to help your team, that's going to provide help for the things that you need to shore up. And to act as if the best teams are out here only drafting best player available is nothing but lies. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, and I've got a giant issue. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of A Giant Issue, New York Giants on SI. That's where you get all of your New York Giants news and information. Make sure you go over there and check out what we're doing over there. It is a lot going on. There is everything, and we are worse for wear, but we'll get through it, I promise you. Make sure that you come over to the New York Giants on SI YouTube channel. Like, come hang out with us. We're trying to do a thing, right? We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers before we get to the draft. I know it's going to be difficult. It's already the 8th of April, and we only have a couple weeks left until we get to the draft. But I have a feeling that you guys can get the requisite 500 plus subscribers that we need to get to 3,000 before the draft, and the 5,000 that we want to be at before the beginning of the new season hits. I digress. This really came about when I was watching a clip, because I don't have ESPN, because all of ESPN is just, arguments, hot takes. And while I like a good hot take or a spicy argument, I don't need to watch the entire thing in order to see that. I can watch the clips and get that. And a clip came across my algorithm, and within it talked about, it was Stephen A. Smith and Dan Orlovsky, who I have a lot of issues with Dan Orlovsky, but I try to respect because he played the game, and he played the game at the highest level, right? He was an NFL quarterback. Regardless of what he may have been as an NFL quarterback, he was an NFL quarterback. And you can't be trash and make it to the league. Now, if I'm being honest, never thought Dan Orlovsky was that great. Didn't think he was great in college. Didn't know how he ended up in the league. Didn't think he was good in the league. But I respect the fact that he was there, because I wasn't good enough to get to the league, right? I wasn't good enough to make it. Nobody thought, hey, let's go find Gene Clemens and put him in the league. Somebody thought that about Dan Orlovsky. I actually don't mind his opinion on a lot of things, except it seems as if he has a really big blind spot when it comes to the quarterback position at the NFL level. I've heard him just say things that always just ugh. So he was having a conversation with Stephen A. Smith about whether or not the Giants should take Travis Hunter or take Shaduer Sanders. And Stephen A. Smith said, the Giants don't have a quarterback. I know Russell Wilson is there. I know Jameis Winston's there, but they don't have a quarterback. And I think that Shaduer Sanders is big time. And Dan Orlovsky, was really more of a Travis Hunter guy. And when Stephen A. mentioned about Shaduer Sanders, he was like, "Yeah, but you don't take a player because of need. That's not what the good teams do." And I was like, "That's not what the good teams do." And so then, and it just got me to thinking, because I always default to best player available when you don't have a glaring need, right? Or when there's nobody close to where you're picking that is a need, right? Like you don't have anybody ranked there close. You don't move all the way up to get a guy. So is Dan Orlovsky saying that, you don't take Shaduer Sanders because these other people are just so much better? Or is he saying that, hey, Shaduer Sanders isn't worth taking with the third pick? That would be picking for need and not for best player available. My problem is when your best player available or when your need is close to where the best player available is. I don't care what any of you guys tell me, right? I don't care what any of you tell me. Abdul Carter is not infinitely better at his position within this draft than Shaduer Sanders is at his position. Here's what I mean. Abdul Carter, if I miss on the Abdul Carter, there are 4 to 5 other edge rushers that are probably going to be taken in the first round that have an opportunity to be really good edge rushers. There's another 6 that are probably going to go in the second and third round that have just as good an opportunity to be a good defensive end edge rusher in the National Football League. There's one guy that you guys can say, or that you guys would say and not get laughed out of the shop, that they are at the level of Shaduer Sanders, and that's Cam Ward. And quite honestly, the only reason that people keep putting Cam Ward above Shaduer Sanders, and I'm okay with it, right? I'm okay with it. But the only reason people keep doing it is because he is perceived to be faster. We don't really know if that's true. And he's perceived to have, well, not perceived, he has a stronger arm. He has a stronger arm. That's not debatable. But he's not more accurate. He doesn't throw a more timely ball. He doesn't make better decisions in the pocket. He doesn't manipulate the pocket better. He doesn't throw better under pressure. Like none of that stuff. All of that is just conjecture. Because Shaduer Sanders, for every throw you show me of Ward throwing under pressure, I can show you Sanders throwing under pressure. But none of the rest of these quarterbacks are in their stratosphere. Sorry, Jackson Dart, you're not. And every time I hear someone say that Jackson Dart is, I just go, oh, there's an agenda here. Don't care about that agenda. But it got me thinking. And I said to myself, is it really the case that the good teams only draft for best player available? Is it really true that the quote unquote good teams don't draft for need? And so I just went back and looked at the 2024 NFL draft results, right? Because that should give us an idea of the good teams drafting for best player available as opposed to drafting for need. So, last year, right, last season, 2024, in the draft, the Washington Commanders drafted Jaden Daniels. They took him with the 2nd overall pick. Did they take him because he was the best player available? Because in many people's eyes, Joe Alt was the best player available. Guess what Washington needs desperately? Better offensive linemen. J.C. Latham was one of the better players available. Guess what Washington needs? Offensive linemen. Marvin Harrison was there. Malik Neighbors was there. And yet, all of these guys who people were saying, if you just rated them, right? If you just rated them and put them in order of the best players in the draft, all of those guys would probably be ahead of Jaden Daniels. And yet, they took Jaden Daniels. The Patriots took Drayton May. Atlanta took Michael Penix with the 8th pick. They took him even though they had $100 million quarterback who they had just signed. Are you telling me that you believe that? And I love Michael Penix. Nobody was on the Michael Penix train like I was. I did not have Caleb Williams number 1. I had Caleb Williams number 2. I had Jaden Daniels 1, Caleb Williams number 2, and Michael Penix was nipping at his heels, right? But Michael Penix was not a better prospect, was not the best player available at 8. He wasn't. And Brock Bowers was still out there at 8. Right? Fashanu was still out there at 8. Rome Odunze was available at 8. Jared Verse was at 8. Dallas Turner was at 8. Right? Quinyon Mitchell was at 8. Yo, I'm not doing any revisionist history here. I'm telling you that these, if you're talking about best player available for a team that needed O-line help, D-line help, wide receiver assistance, and defensive backs, they decided to go quarterback after taking $100+ million quarterback. Come on. JJ McCarthy went 10th. JJ McCarthy went 10th, and they already had Sam Darnold. JJ McCarthy went 10th over a lot of those same names that I just mentioned. Oh, you don't think that the Vikings need upgrades at offensive and defensive line? You don't think they could have used a Jared Verse? Like, when I think about these people, I'm going, well, what are we talking about here? Denver took Bo Nix 12th. You're telling me that Denver had a chance to get Brock Bowers, right? Because Brock Bowers went 13th. Denver had a chance to get Brock Bowers, had a chance to get Jared Verse, had a chance to get Fatano, had a chance to get Quinn Mitchell. All guys who could have helped bolster areas of need, and yet they still went and got a quarterback whom a lot of people didn't even have in their top 25 or top 50 players. You're telling me that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks were a part of the top 12 best players available? Oh, but coach, but those are teams that were bad the year before. They weren't bad the year after. Why? Because they all got quarterbacks, right? You could argue that if the Patriots had put Drake May in earlier, they may have had a better season. But we know that the fix was in, and they were trying to get their coach just there for 1 year to put a gap in between, so that they could bring in the guy they really wanted to bring in. But this idea that the best teams take the best player available is false, and I'll prove it right now. We're going to go to the top, right? We're going to go to the best teams, right? Buffalo at 33 took Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman was not the best player available. The Buffalo Bills needed a wide receiver, and more specifically, they needed a big body wide receiver. That's why the Bills took Keon Coleman. Because if they had taken the best player available, you can't tell me that Keon Coleman was a better wide receiver than Ladd McConkey was. You can't tell me that Keon Coleman was a better overall best player than Tavondre Sweat was, than Braden Fisk was, than Cooper DeJean was, Kool-Aid McKinstry. All of these were guys that went after Keon Coleman at 33. San Francisco took Ricky Pearsall. Why did they take Ricky Pearsall? Because they had wide receiver issues. They knew they were going to have wide receiver issues, so they took a wide receiver. And lo and behold, wide receiver issues happen. You're telling me that Ricky Pearsall was a better wide receiver, prospect than Lad McConkey was? No, but he might have fit their scheme. Why? Because he was a position of need for them. Kansas City took Xavier Worthy. They did not take the best player available. They took Xavier Worthy. Why? Because he's a fast wide receiver that fit into what they want to do offensively, right? He's a position of need. That is the champions, right? The champions aren't taking best player available. Yet people want to tell me, oh, you got to take best player available. That's what I be trying to figure out. Jacksonville took Brian Thomas. Why? Because they had a bunch of wide receivers that underachieved. They already gave one away. They needed to get a new one in the fold. Miami took Chop Robinson. Why? Because they needed defensive end help. Pittsburgh took Troy Fatanu. Why? Because they needed offensive linemen. The Rams took Jared Verse. Why? Because they needed defensive linemen. These were need picks. These were not luxury picks. These were not, hey, we're playoff teams, so let's just take the best player available. No, these were, hey, we have a need. We're going to fill that need because we're trying to get better. This whole idea about best player available is such a crock. It's such utter BS. You want to know when people start talking about best player available? When they want to discredit your pick. When they want to discredit what you decide that you're going to do with your pick. That's when they start talking best player available. That's when they want to tell you about best player available. When they want you to believe that you are reaching, right? That's what they do. And here's how I know that that's what they do. Here's how I know that that's how they think about things, right? Because they killed Detroit in 2023. They killed Detroit for their first pick, taking Jahmyr Gibbs at running back with number 12. They killed him, right? Now, you might argue that Jahmyr Gibbs was the best player available, but clearly nobody else thought he was. But you know what what Detroit knew they needed? They knew they needed an explosive running back. So they took him at 12. Then they came back at 18 and they did the most blasphemous thing you can do in today's NFL draft. They took a middle linebacker in the first round. They took Jack Campbell. They took Jack Campbell with the 18th pick. And they got killed. They got slammed. They got murdered. All of the people out there saying how awful of a draft Detroit had because they took those two dudes with their first two picks. Then they came back and, oh my God, they took a tight end. They took a tight end with the second round pick, but Detroit has had disastrous luck with tight ends. Oh, Detroit has TJ Hawkinson. Detroit had TJ Hawkinson at the time. And they took Sam Laporta, right? Sam Laporta was not the best player available at 34. Sorry. He was not. Now, hindsight being what it is, Sam Laporta might be hindsight. But at the time, no. There's some argument for a lot of people over there. They took Brian Branch at 45. They needed defensive back help. This draft for the Detroit Lions set up what they would eventually do in 2024. It set up what they would eventually do in 2024. A lot of those players were linchpin parts of the rebuild that started in 2023 and then kept on going in 2024. None of those were best player available, at least not to the outside world, right? So unless you can see a team's big board, how do you know who the best player available is? It's just based off of who you believe it is. It's based off who I believe it is. So why is it so hard for people to believe that Shaduer Sanders might be on my best player availables? Just because he's not on yours, right? It's arguable. It's arguable that Ashton Genty might be the best player in this draft. Nobody's talking about him going number one overall. Why? Because nobody's drafting best player available on a regular basis. Best player available is reserved for teams who don't have any glaring holes. Best player available is for playoff teams who don't have to lose anybody in free agency. Because I guarantee you this, right? Watch this. Philadelphia will not draft best player available. Philadelphia will fill a need. I guarantee you. They don't have any other choice. They've got to build through the draft because they don't really have a ton of cap space left. They've done all of the trickery and the maneuvering that they can do. You think Washington's going to go in and draft best player available when they clearly have needs that they need to put into place to try to upgrade this team? You're bugging. So all this thought process about best player available, you know what it really should be? It's the best player that you have who's available. Because a lot of people were shocked. A lot of people were shocked to see how high, right? A lot of people were shocked to see how high Jaden Daniels went. There were a lot of people who did not realize that Jaden Daniels was that high on everybody's big board. That Jaden Daniels, while everyone outside was saying Drake May, while everyone on the outside was saying Drake May has a chance to be the number one pick, everybody on the inside was saying Jaden Daniels. And if we had number one, we'd take Jaden Daniels. I have no doubt in my mind that Jaden Daniels was the pick for Washington if they had the first pick or the second pick. They were hoping that the Bears took Caleb Williams so that they could take Jaden Daniels, because that guy's going to fit my offensive coordinator's style. Right? He's going to give me the things that I want out of today's NFL quarterback. Oh, and he doesn't seem to have any of that softness in him that it seemed like maybe the other guys might have had. Jaden Daniels was the best player available to Washington, but he wasn't the best player available on the world's big board. But if that's what we're supposed to go by, then the entire thing is just being done wrong. Or do you just want to try to discredit players? Because you don't have to do that. You can just say, hey, that player's not good. I don't like him. And you want to know what's going to bear it out at the end? It's going to be what they do in the league, or if they get a chance to do it in the league. I'm telling you without any like bias. I don't have anything to win by this. I believe that Shaduer Sanders is the goods. And sometimes when you're the goods, a lot of people can't see it if it's not done in spectacular fashion. If it's not done with the easy to see tangible things, people can't see it. But there's just certain people that have it. And why is it that it never gets associated with certain people. I'm telling you, Shaduer Sanders has it. And if the New York Giants pass on it, they're going to regret it. If New York Giants fans watch this team pass on it, it'll be just another thing Giants fans can complain about. Right? But if that doesn't happen, if Shaduer Sanders goes to a team and he doesn't do well, guess what you can say? Hey, Coach Gene, you were wrong. Coach, you were wrong. Coach, you don't know what you were talking about. Remember when you said, you want to know how I know that? Because anytime I've ever said something wrong or gotten something wrong, even without any context to it, people have made it a point to come back and tell me I was wrong. But I'm out here willing to put my name on it. And there's so many people not willing to put their name on it, or that want to dance around backhanded compliments like Dan Orlovsky does. Dan Orlovsky does not believe Shaduer Sanders is a great quarterback. He'll say, hey, I think Shaduer Sanders is great, and then tell you all the reasons why Shaduer Sanders isn't great. He'll say something like, oh man, I really think Shaduer Sanders is great, but I just think a guy like Jackson Dart, man, I can't turn his film off. So you think Shaduer Sanders is great, but you can't stop watching Jackson Dart? That means you like Jackson Dart over Shaduer Sanders. But he won't just come straight out and go, hey, I really like Jackson Dart over Shaduer Sanders. You want to know why? Because then he has to worry about people coming back and questioning him. And the name of the game in the draftnik world, right, is to give you so many different views that you don't really know what the person believes themselves. That's why you see all of the different mock drafts, and every mock draft is a big change. Every mock draft is a cataclysmic shift. Why? Because they gotta. So now at the end, when we finally get to draft day, one of the 10 drafts that they put out is going to have some type of accuracy. And if you piece together all the drafts, well, I told you in my mock draft 2.5 that Shaduer Sanders would get taken by the Giants. Yeah, but then in another mock draft, you told me Shaduer Sanders was going to drop out the first round. See, that's the problem when people try to tell you, oh, best player available. In a perfect world, this is what we would do, right? In a perfect world, every person who considers himself to really be a guy or a girl who's about that draft life will wait until after the pro days are over, right? You can put out little pieces. Hey, I think this person has a chance to go here, but everybody would then just drop their mock drafts after the majority of the pro days, or at least the ones that matter, are over, and then spend the next 3 weeks up until the draft defending their choices. Hey, this is why I believe Cam Ward's going number one. Don't give me the BS about, well, I talked to a GM, an anonymous scout, a bathroom attendant, somebody's ex-wife. I talked to someone that we can't name because of sources of blah, 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 blah. Lies. You spoke to nobody. And the person that you spoke to gave you misinformation to put out there for them. Because everybody's lying in April. Everybody's lying. But if we would just put our mock drafts out and then defend them, one after everybody brings their mock draft sword out and just goes to defending themselves. This is where I stay on. This is what I believe. This entire season, I put out one mock draft. For Fantasy Life, I put out a 3-round mock draft. I did not put out I did not put out something that I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really believe this. I put out something because I really believed it. I went some different ways because I said, hey, what if? Right? But if I was putting out a mock draft of what I believed, where I thought players would go, it wouldn't be based off of what a GM thought. It would be based off what I thought. Because that would make sense. And I'm willing to defend it. And I wish more people would be willing to defend it. It would make it so much fun. That way, when somebody says, hey, I'm drafting this player because they're the best player available, I can go, why are you taking Cam Ward number 1? Because nobody's going to tell me that Cam Ward is the best player available. Stop the madness. Stop the caps in your raps. There has hardly ever been a time, not once, outside of Cam Newton, where the number 1 pick that was a quarterback was the best player available. Don't believe me? Just watch. Don't believe me? Just watch. I love Lamar Jackson. But even in that draft, I don't believe he was the best player available. The best player available in that draft went number 2 to guess who? The Giants. I had it in my mind that the Cleveland Browns should have taken Saquon Barkley, number 1 overall, then came back and got Lamar Jackson with their second first-round draft pick. And you know what would have happened if that would have happened? The Cleveland Browns would have been the most dominant football team in the NFL for the last 10 years, or for 10 years. The evidence is out there. Just do yourself a favor. Go back and look at all the drafts over the past 5 years and tell me how many drafts you see where the best player does not go number 1 overall. 2022, Trayvon Walker is the number 1 pick. Aiden Hutchinson is number 2. Hutchinson was better than Walker in college. He's better than Walker in the league. Derek Stingley went 3rd. He was better than Walker in college. He's better than Walker in the league. Sauce Gardner went 4. He was better than Walker in college. He's better than Walker in the league. Best player available? That's not what Jacksonville did. They took a guy because they thought he was going to have the most potential. How about 2021? Trevor Lawrence, number 1 overall. Number 2 was Zach Wilson. Number 3 was Trey Lance. Kyle Pitts was 4th. Jamar Chase was 5th. Penei Sewell was 7th. Patrick Surtain was 9th. The Heisman Trophy winner, Devontae Smith, was 10th. You're telling me that they took the best players available in that draft? Is San Francisco bad? Because they took a quarterback because they thought they needed a quarterback. They didn't take the best player available. They took a project from an FCS school that was a run-first quarterback who hadn't proven that he could throw the ball worth a darn. They took him with the number 3 overall pick. Please tell me how the great teams, how the good teams don't pick for need. I don't know. I guess I'm the one, right? I guess it's just me. You guys got me worked up in a lather tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me. New York Giants on SI. That's where you get all of your New York Giants news and information from. Make sure you go over there, check out everything we're doing. I've got a couple of really cool little pieces out right now. I'm talking about the worst draft picks of the past 20 years. And then I've got a piece coming on the best day 3 picks of the past 20 years. Who's your best day 3 pick for the New York Giants? I'd love to hear it. Check all of those out at the New York Giants on SI. Come over here, hit the subscribe button. I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you have to say. Leave those comments. I try to get to as many as I can. You guys know that. Until next time, I'm Coach Gene Clemens. I've got a giant issue.